Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening for our panel. I am Shayna Weber. I am a screenwriter and producer, and I'm also a creative executive at the ISA. I moderate some of our online events. This is the first one that I've actually seen people's bodies, other than like their head right here, on anything in a while. So bear with me if there's awkwardness, because this is weird, you guys. It's weird for me. So I'm going to pass it down the line and have each of our panelists introduce themselves and tell you what they do.
Hello, my name is Felicity Wren. I don't have a karaoke song. I am terrible at karaoke. I am the VP of Development at the International Screenwriters Association. That means I look after the development department, our development slate writers, and I foster and continue the conversations with the industry professionals that we've met over the last few years, hoping to continue our giant Tinder practice of matching writers with producers, studios, and executives. Not at the moment, of course.
I would prefer Hinge or something.
Hinge. Well, sometimes it's Bumble, sometimes it's Grindr. Well, let me tell you that. But we're not doing it, of course, right now because we support the writer's strike. I am also the VP, the co-VP of development for Creative Screenwriter Productions, which is the production arm of the ISA. We've had some incredible meetings over the last 2 years. We decided to start the company January 2020. That was a good time, right? Great time. But we have had some incredible meetings, and we've been able to introduce our writers and make some friendships around town with that. I also have a production company in the United Kingdom, which is where I come from originally, called Unrestricted View. It's a live venue in Islington, but we also curate 3 film festivals annually. So I still have my little fingers over there in the UK, but I've been in LA for 13 years, and it goes quick, but I love it. What a great place. Meg.
Hi, I'm Meg Swertlow. I am a screenwriter and a director. I won the ISA Grand Prize of Shoot Your Short in February of 2020. We didn't shoot that in April of 2020, but that short is played at Holly Shorts on Friday night in the horror block. It's called No Overnight Parking, starring Alyssa Milano and French Stewart. So we had a lot of fun doing that, and I tend to focus in the horror space and write about flawed female characters, underdogs, fucking up the man, so...
We will deep dive into Meg's child trauma later.
Dad.
Passing it to me. My name is Timm. I'm the Director of Education with the ISA. Felicity mentioned part of what I do, co-VP of Creative Screenwriter Productions. I created a whole bunch of coursework for the ISA. I coach writers one-on-one through my consulting company called The Story Farm. I am on panels like this just almost as much as Shayna is, and I mirror what you're saying, or second what you're saying. Mirror would be weird. It would be the reverse.
Kind of.
But yeah, this is the first live panel I've been on in 4 years. It's very strange, weird, and we used to do this all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. It was old hat after a while, and now it's like, wow, we have to get used to people just sitting here and
rework
staring
that muscle.
Yeah.
Just
on
like
Zoom,
looking at
on a
people.
webinar, you don't see any of the people. They're just little words and names that pop up in the chat box. So this is much more personable. And it's one reason why we wanted to do this topic of talking about things that are personable and personal for us, for all of you then, who are writers and creators, to be able to use this in your development approach.
Yes, so starting off, we are going to talk about, I'm going to ask each of you to tell me about a movie that is your favorite, and this will kind of lead into where we're going. I would love all of you to also think about these questions and how they pertain to you. How many screenwriters are in? Good, good, perfect. Well, it pertains to all of you. You can take all of these when you think about what stories you like, what movies you like, what books you like. So let's start off with Felicity. What is a movie that you love, that resonates with you, and why?
See, one is really hard, right? Mm-hmm. No one really only has one movie that they really like. So I'm going to rattle them off quickly so it appears that I'm not saying 4, I'm only saying 1.
Okay.
And the first one is The Truman Show. And I love The Truman Show because I like how it examines American society, the media, truth, overcoming fear. Then I'm going to go for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Yes, I might have a tiny bit of a crush on Jim Carrey. Please don't,
So do I.
Oh, you do?
Conan.
Yeah, I mean, well, he's the modern Dick Van Dyke in my eyes. And Dick Van Dyke, woohoo, legend. So anyway, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, incredible movie. I love how they are willing to step back into love, even though they know their hearts are going to be broken. I have to allow 10 minutes after I watch that movie to cry and remember all my past loves. But it is a very moving kind of experience for me. Then I like The Hours. I like The Hours because it's about emancipation, women finding their voices, breaking against society norms. I'm really interested in that because I'm a woman. And it's great to have such great roles for female characters. Finally, I'm going to go with Being There, 1979. Peter Sellers movie, Shirley MacLaine. The last moment of it, there's a tagline that comes up, and it says, "Life is a state of mind." And I just love that as an idea. I love this movie anyway because it's such an incredible journey about someone who only knows about gardening and what he learned on TV, and then how he finds his way through society and how other people put their ideas of who he is on him, and how he's just a happy-go-lucky person going through his life. But life is a state of mind. What we're going to do, how we're going to live it, how can we engage fully in what we're doing, how can we use our voice? Quick, right?
Well, that was too many.
Sorry.
But Meg, on to you.
All right.
So I also have a lot, but I won't go into all of them, which is Newsies, Pretty in Pink, Home Alone, and Scream. And I realized, thinking about that today, is they all are underdogs. They're all people that you don't think can win, that you underestimate, no matter the genre. And so for me, it's that I'm rooting for them to fuck up the men, as I said. And I also, like with Scream, I love smart characters. Like Kevin McAllister is so smart, and Sidney Prescott is so smart. So for me, I root. I love watching people you don't think are gonna win totally win. So yeah.
I will go with just one, Shayna. I'll answer Shayna's question correctly.
I liked Meg's answer, though.
I
love all
thought it
those
was
movies.
really smart because I
Yes.
tied them all together.
You did. You did. Good job. Good job, Meg.
Thanks.
So now I feel bad only doing one. I'll do just the one. There are plenty, but It's a Wonderful Life, probably my all-time favorite movie.
I knew it.
Yeah, everybody already knows that. It's a Wonderful Life. Because of the forced selflessness of the situation he's in, and how he went deep into victim mode after having to experience all that. And I'm assuming we're going to get further into why these movies affect us so much.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, co-host. Okay, so that is leading us into the first topic that we're talking about tonight, which is voice. So let's first define voice, because it's kind of a confusing word when you're talking about screenwriting. You're like, is it my brand? Is it writing what I know? What is it? So Felicity, maybe you can talk a little bit about what's your definition of voice.
I love voice. Voice is the best thing about every individual, and you should lean into your voice with every single moment, every single second, every single fiber of your being, because that is your special sauce. That is the thing that makes you unique, and it's the thing that's going to make your work stand out from everybody else's. So lean into your voice. Your voice is everything you already know. It's your life experiences, it's the beliefs you've had, it's the stories you've told, it's the stories you're telling yourself in your head. And then I think to add to your voice, it's then all the things you're curious about, you're passionate about, things you want to learn, things you want to know about, the arguments that you have in your head with yourself before you go to sleep, and the things that make you wake up in the morning excited for your day. Brand, I think, is something they used to say, you have to kind of put yourself in this box. You need to be a romantic writer, and you need to, and then it's just because they wanted to pigeonhole you. Now you have to be a multi-hyphenate. You have to have 50 different things that you can do all at once, including juggling. Just in case you didn't know that, please write that on your CV. But the brand now is your voice. So you can take these arguments, these thoughts, these stories, the pressure points in your life that have affected you, and you can use them across all kinds of genres. You can use them in romantic comedies and war films. The main thing is that you're digging into the thing that really eats you or enlivens you or, I don't know, kind of really... I always say that to our writers, I see you on the page. You know, you might try and hide from us, pretend that it's, oh, this is about a dad. No, it's not. It's about you. And you're trying to make it a dad. But that's okay. In fact, the more you lean into it and the more you reveal and be vulnerable, we get it. Oh, my God, there's nothing more lovely than seeing the truth of you on the page. And because we are all connected, let's not pretend we're not. We are all connected. If you are truthful in it and honest, that vulnerability makes it sing. And it'll have a different kind of authenticity.
And Max, do you want to add anything to that about voice itself before I ask Meg, since you're a writer also? Meg is a screenwriter also, so she's coming from the side of development, of looking at someone else. As writers, when you think of voice and your own voice, how would you describe that?
I think to really break it down, it's your perspective on the world and everything that's happening around you and other people. So any situation that occurs, we all in this room could see the same thing happen, and each of us are going to have a different perspective as to how we're taking that in. And it's based on everything that we've experienced in our past. More often than not, it's unconscious, our voice. And so as writers and artists, we really have to hone in on what is it, where we are now, because my voice when I was 13, completely different than it is now, and it will be different when I'm, in my 70s or something. So
It was probably higher.
my voice was high. I mean, I don't know. I developed early.
All right. Hello, my name's Max.
She just does this. We know each other a little too well. So I will say perspective for now. I'm really curious how you define voice, Meg.
I had to look it up today. So I was like, what? It's like that elusive...
It's hard to figure out.
It's, voice for the page is how you write, dialogue, action lines. It's, to me, it's the whole package. And for me, with my writing, I think if you read my writing, you know it's me without being on the page, because I have a very conversational style when I write. My action lines, I guess you could say that they can be irreverent. I talk to the reader. I try to have fun with it. And because that is how I talk, like I write like I talk. And from the perspective of someone, as I said, who I hope is underestimated, but we'll see if I get estimated one day. But as someone who didn't feel like they fit in, as someone who's struggled with mental health and addiction issues, whether it's being addicted to a person, and who uses humor, and specifically probably dark humor, to deal with life. I mean, I think in the saddest moments, there tends to be so much humor. When, I've been in the room with, people who die, and we are outside, laughing afterwards. I mean, not someone hasn't been murdered or anything, but, in the room with my mom's best friend, and then, her son afterwards, we're just laughing about something else. And I think that there's so much beauty in pain and pain in beauty, and so my stuff tends to have a mix of both and all. And I hope that you think it's going to be one thing, and then it hits you with something heartfelt, or you think it's going to be heartfelt and then or dramatic, and then Alyssa Milano's covered in blood in a parking garage running someone over. So I don't know.
Well, I think going back to the movies that you love, that's exactly in line with what your voice on the page is. The underdog, underestimated characters, people who rise above and succeed, under crazy circumstances, whatever they are, if they're a murderous person or, people...
The wet bandits.
Right, yeah, the wet bandits. Didn't they change their name in the second one?
Sticky bandits?
Right, sure, okay, good. I just watched it the other day, the whole thing. Okay, so let's talk about in terms of using your voice moving forward, and this will be our little ISA kind of deal. Felicity, can you talk about ISA, and then for development slate specifically, which Meg is on, and Meg, maybe you can talk about that too. Talk about how a writer stands out to you with their voice in order to sort of, even in contests, getting on the development slate, anything, how does somebody stand out with using their voice?
Yeah, I think what Meg was saying there about the fact that you can recognize her voice on the page, that's absolutely true. And I was thinking about recording artists, and the whole thing that they say is that you need to be able to be recognizable in the first few bars of your song. So leaning into that rather than shying away from it. I think for the development slate, we get just to explain, the development slate is a top tier of writers that, it sounds a bit like I'm a kleptomaniac. I am a kleptomaniac. For 8 years, I've been finding writers that I think have an amazing voice, who are authentic, who have a passion. We have a no a-holes policy. You know, you have to be able to take notes and smile, and then actually take the note and try and work out what on earth we're trying to tell you. Because not everyone always knows what they want, but you have to kind of be able to go, okay, what is the note behind the note? So we're looking for writers that want to work hard, that want to throw their hat in the ring, that actually just need someone to hold them by the hand or be a conduit to give them the opportunities that you don't get. Everyone writes a screenplay and then they're scared to death. Now what? Now what? Who cares? So we try and be the who cares, we care at the ISA. And I think the fact that we're all artists ourselves, we all come from either an acting, producing, writing standpoint, means that we also understand how hard it is. So that development slate is now just over 200 writers in my 8 years. I look for authenticity. I look for a unique voice. We have baby writers that are just out of college. We have second careerers. We have people that are repped at CAA. It is a vast array of writers. But what they all have in common is that they are plucky. Is that a word for America?
Yes. No, it's
Plucky.
It's real.
You know what I mean? They're willing to be vulnerable. They're willing to try. They're willing to do the work. It's not easy to be a writer. It's the most impossible thing. And, you know, because again, we are all creative people, we see how hard it is. And anything we can do to help you, we want to do. And the development slate in particular, we do script notes for them, we do pitch practices, we find them original writing assignments. We're a cheerleader when they're down, you know. It's just a case of like giving people who are extremely talented just an opportunity to shine. And there are so many really talented people out there that just no one knows about. And being told that someone believes in you is sometimes what you need just to start, to kind of like step off.
And then I'll just add, in terms of getting noticed, because this is a little bit of a loaded statement. It's going to sound a lot easier said than done. But you can tell when a writer is trying to be the genre as opposed to their being themselves within a genre. And it doesn't feel authentic that way. It's just like, oh, I'm just reading a script. I'm not reading so-and-so's script. And especially with the development slate, we want to know the writer just as much or more than the script. And I think the industry at large feels that way. They want to be able to shepherd people just as much or more than the actual screenplays.
Right. Are there some examples of famous screenwriters that you recognize right off the bat? Like when you're seeing something that they've written, read something that they wrote, are there specific people like, yep, that's a blah, blah, blah?
I mean, I don't think I can say, yes, that's blah, 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 but I can, so I got to read the first 20 pages of the Barbie script, which, like, I guess, like, no one's read even at the agency, but a friend didn't send it to me. We read it in our writers group.
Was it really bare, like Lady Bird?
No, it is the opposite. It's over 140 pages, and at the beginning it's like, this is over 140 pages, but don't worry, it'll go really fast, and there's a lot of photos, or a lot of pictures. And it is so irreverent, it is so funny, and it's like, Dame Judi Dench says this. You know, it turns out to be Helen Mirren, but it's like, and then Chris Hemsworth's here, and then that, and then they just kind of like shoot for the stars, and it's so, so fun, and you could tell that Greta and Noah, we're on a first name basis now, since I read 20 pages of the script. You can tell that they had fun.
Yeah.
And you can tell in the movie that they had fun. So that was really exciting to read. And then I reread the Scream script on Monday, because I'm always stealing from Kevin Williamson. And it is so well written. The action lines are so good. And then there are these lines that are like, and I've watched that movie so many times, and I didn't realize there's Tatum and Sydney are like outside talking at Tatum's house, Rose McGowan's house, and it says something like, far off in the trees, the Scream mask,
Ghost face
the ghost.
killer.
Well, I don't think they
don't call it
him
that?
in it. They just the ghost mask guy is like off in the back. You'd have to see this a second time. Like you have to see this just a second time to even notice it. And I loved, I think that's so fun, because I think it's like you have to remember, and I feel like from a marketing standpoint, like you are sending this as a document. For me, it's like, I want this it is being read. It's not being watched, it's being read. So how are you being entertaining to the reader who's reading a bunch of stuff, who's not reading it like that closely? If people haven't read the script for A Quiet Place, it's a very quick read, because there's like one word, one page, one word. And I just stole stuff for that, for No Overnight Parking, of just like there's steps. And so I have like step down the page. So
Yeah, I think there's a shift, speaking of that, in screenwriting, where you do have the ability to have a little bit more fun on the page. It's not so formal. When I write, we add pictures now to it if that is the tone that we're going for. Like a comedy horror, we add photos in it.
Just want everybody to be careful with that, though.
Yes, no, that's what I was getting to. There's room, but you have to know the level that you're at. These amazing writers at that top level have that ability to do that. They're at that place where they're like, I can write this on the page. You have to watch it a second time to see that. That being said, beginning writers maybe don't have that much leniency in terms
that was Kevin
of,
Williamson's first movie that got produced.
Well, then
I'm just saying. We're not. I'm not.
I mean,
Kevin
I love
Williamson,
it.
but
I love breaking rules and doing it the way that you want. I just think you have to make sure it's smart.
let other people read your stuff.
Yeah.
And tell them, and to have them tell you, is this too much?
Right. Yeah.
I think it's also important to note that, like, if you read a script by Woody Allen, Quentin Tarantino, Simon Kinberg, Shane Black, Nora Ephron, Diablo Cody, you know that this is that person's screenplay. And the industry also wants to know that. The industry wants to know how to place you, because if it's too open-ended, then they don't know where to put you. And you then also think back, like Nora Ephron herself, I'm assuming, would never say, I'll write The English Patient. Like that wouldn't be her screenplay. So a lot of thoughts could be like, well, what if I'm trying to write a sweeping romantic drama set in 1950, and we're talking about little quips and scene direction and trying to be kind of funny. Well, you wouldn't do that. But you would have to come up with your own way of presenting something that is somewhat literary, somewhat cerebral, without going over the top, because we can't do that in a screenplay. But yeah.
Turn myself off and now turn back on. I'm quite enjoying some pitch decks that we're getting that will give you some music suggestions. So you get a pitch deck and you get a little place to click, and it says, listen to this music as you read this next piece. And it is quite atmospheric. And I think...
My God, so much work.
Yeah. Well, also it's dedication.
Now there's
Dedication.
music.
I know. Sorry,
man.
more free work, everybody. I know, so awful, isn't it? But that does make a difference, so that you go like, because you're always looking to find a way to stand out as well. And with your pitch decks, tone is very important. That's your chance. I think you just have to accept the fact that the industry is now sold on pitch decks, same as it's sold on actors doing self-tapes. Yeah. So how can you use it as a way to show your expertise and your voice, and how you would do it if you were directing it and if you were kind of producing it? What's your favorite version of it? And just treat it as an exercise for yourself in dreaming.
I did a pitch deck for a pilot script called Witch Please, and the pitch deck is a spell book written by, it's like an old spell book, and then the lead characters of the pilot are two sisters who are always like bickering, and so they have the spell book, and then they've gone back and written stuff in, and they're like fighting on the page, and I just had so much
Love
fun
that.
with it.
Yeah.
So it just, to me, I thought it's like I want it to be enjoyable.
It's like the new query letter that used to be sent out, and you put like things in it, or like burn the pages if you're doing like a pirate story, and send it out, and you're like,
There are
yeah.
fake bird pages in this. Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so let's move on to talk specifically about voice, how you can figure out ways to define your own voice. And I'm going to move it over to Max, who consults with writers all the time, and he does an exercise kind of about your flaws and how to recognize those and use those to your advantage.
Sure. Okay, I don't want to take too long because we would want to open it up to questions, but plus I don't want to take over too much. So I have a little exercise that I have my writers do. It's really the only form of journaling that I ask my writers to do. It's called voice pressure points. And it's pretty simple. You just look back in your past, any point, preferably a moment as opposed to multiple weeks or months or something. If you can, find a moment in your past that you remember distinctly, either something negative or positive, but whatever it was that happened, it changed your perspective on the world around you. Something happened that you now looking back, you may not have known it at the time, but now looking back you think, yeah, wow, I maybe didn't change that day, but because of this moment I became a part of, at least a piece of who I am right now. As an example, I tell this story all the time because it's fun. I was 11 years old. I loved baseball, still love baseball. Played it all the time. I was actually pretty good. Not trying to be too cocky, but I think I was. And she doesn't believe me. But I remember my dad and his brother, my uncle, were sitting in our back porch. It was August. We're big, huge Cubs fans, and this was probably, well, whenever it was, the Cubs were terrible. And just sitting there, and my uncle asked me out of the blue, Max, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I remember thinking in my head and almost reacting in a way of, what do you mean? And I said, I'm going to be the shortstop to the Chicago Cubs. And my uncle just kind of nodded, and my dad didn't raise his voice. He didn't think through his response, which he has apologized since. But he said, oh, Max, you're not going to be the shortstop for the Cubs. Just like threw it out there, like didn't even think about, here I was walking around with my glove, I'm 11 years old. And because of the type of kid I was at the time, I didn't have either an internal response or an external response of, you're wrong, I'll show you. It was, he must be right. And so the main reason it sticks out is not because I got into some huge argument. I have a fantastic relationship with my father. My dad is not the reason I didn't become a professional athlete. But it was the first moment in my life that doubt was instilled. And I didn't know it until many, many years later. And I look back at my middle school years, high school years, and I hesitated with just about anything that I really wanted. And it was unconscious. I had no idea I was doing this. And then when I really got into writing multiple scripts, and then I wrote a young adult fantasy novel, and somebody asked me, because my main character in the book was a 16-year-old female teenager, fairy, 5, 6 inches tall. I have quite literally no connection to this character. But they asked me, why are you the one to write that character? And I didn't know, and that kind of scared me. I was like, wait a minute, how do I define that? Because you're right, why would I be the one to write? And I really looked at her and thought, who is this character? What is she doing? How is she responding to things? And she was responding to all of the turmoil in her life in the way I wish I had when I was 11. She was the exact opposite of how I reacted, where I was like, I guess you're right. And she was the type that was like, no, you're wrong. I won't go into the whole story of her story or anything. But and then it dawned on me, and I was like, wait a minute, there's a connection there. And I looked at all the other characters in the projects that I had written prior, and they were all pretty much of the same type. Some kind of hopeless dreamer, didn't quite believe in themselves, they were an underdog, and they needed other people to give them validation in some way. And it was all of the flaws that I have dealt with my whole life. Thankfully, I've overcome some, but I'm still dealing with, we all are, we're all dealing with shit, you know? And that was the moment when I realized, wow, if I had been conscious of this prior to writing this story, I probably would have gotten through the drafts a lot faster. I would have been able to develop this character that much further, and I wouldn't have had to rewrite so often. So the voice pressure point exercise is for you. You don't have to share it with anybody, but really just try to pinpoint a moment in your past that you remember distinctly. Hopefully it isn't terribly traumatic, but even if it was, something happened that it changed how you look at the world around you, and that then defines the characters that you're putting into.
And we're gonna share ours up here and give you some childhood trauma moments and maybe some therapy. So, do you want me to tell mine, or you want to do yours, Meg?
Well, you're the ringleader.
Okay, I'll tell you mine. Mine is silly. In 6th grade, I was kind of gangly. I looked like a boy, and I got asked out by a popular boy at school, and it was a joke. Don't feel sorry for me. I got my revenge. So that was a moment then that kind of like years later made me think about the stories that I tell, which I love two sides. I love stories about ugly ducklings, fish out of water, people who persevere and find love and win. But then I also love horror movies that I write where girls go and get revenge. And I like when people are fighting demons and bad guys and there's blood and they're kicking ass. So I'm equally like Taylor Swift and Wednesday Addams. It's like two sides of that spectrum. So yeah, that's my trauma.
And there are usually multiple
Sure.
versions.
That's just one that I could pick out that was
Yeah.
like, what?
Like It's a Wonderful Life. How does that connect with my trauma of my father telling me I wouldn't be a professional? It's the story of George Bailey being told that he's not able to do what he wants to do, basically, if you really break down It's a Wonderful Life. And then the happy ending of you already have everything that you need and want. So it's a huge part of the lesson that my own personal character needs to learn. Yeah.
Right. Meg, we are going to you.
Okay, there was gonna be like one traumatic, sad story, but your story reminded me of in 6th grade. It was at
6th grade.
Gregory King's 12th birthday party, and Hip Hop Hooray Ho was playing, and everyone pointed to me for ho. I was in 6th grade. It was like 12.
Meg,
I don't think I'd ever had a
feel
kiss
you.
before.
I
There
was Shayna was a
nothing.
man from Funky Cold Medina.
mean,
Shayna
these
was a
things.
man. I'm like, ah.
I remember what I was
the
wearing was
same.
like from the Limited 2, and it was a bodysuit, but not just I had like skirts. There were shorts. There wasn't a skirt, just a skirt. It was skirt to shorts. I'm always just like
You
the
hoe.
shame. Hip Hop Hooray Ho. And they all pointed at me.
I think they thought you could take it.
Well, I'm gonna one day write a murder
But
story
you
about
stick it to the man
murdering.
now, right?
Yeah. So that I feel like.
And then how do you think, I think
How
we
did
know.
that shape?
But how did that shape you think, as a writer and as a director?
Just the one, I feel like I was always made fun of because I've always, I remember in high school, people coming up to me like, you're the most made fun of girl in our class. And I was like, okay, thank you. Good to be memorable. Because I've always had, a big personality. I've always been like, hey, mean boy, I'm going to tell you my opinion. I've always been, very too opinionated. I have opinions on everything. And that got me a lot of flack. But I did not get quiet. I still was like, I'm gonna be opinionated and I'm gonna write stories about, I remember that script, Witch Please, I wrote. It's because I'm from Los Angeles, so I run into a lot of people that I went to high school with, and there's a girl. I don't even know if she ever spoke to me. I went to a small school, but I don't even know if she spoke to me. But I will just never like her. I will never like her. I will never Facebook friend her. And it's
Does she pop up and you're like, no?
And I'm like, absolutely not. Allison Flashman, I won't. Don't worry, she doesn't watch it. just like, I'll never, like these, I don't know about you guys, but like, don't there people from your like past where you're just like, I will never like you. I don't even know if you did anything wrong to me.
You remember their names?
I remember their names.
Full names. They do not have a first name. They just have a full name.
Yeah, full name.
Yeah,
So I
same.
think those things of I am a resentful little person, and I think those are the things, like anyone who's ever told me I can't do, that I'm not talented, that I'm not good at whatever, like it's been 14 years and I still think about this guy and be like,
Full
I'm gonna
name.
like win an Oscar, Joel Anderson. I'm gonna like
Say their name.
talk about it, even though you're blocked on Facebook, so you can't see. But those things, I just like that spite. Ooh, it gets me. So maybe those things of like being underestimated, being told you're too big, too loud, too much, too colorful.
What I love about this example, though, is because some people would have believed what they said. Like that's how, thankfully, I wasn't, God, I feel so bad that people treated you like that, but you had the wherewithal to go, no, fuck you.
But there's still that fear. I mean,
There's
I don't know.
still-
There's
still
still
that.
that fear of like, I am not talented. I am not good. I don't think I'm a hoe, but like, maybe in my 20s. Definitely. Yeah. Anyway.
But you responded in a way where you needed to go in this direction.
I get bigger
some
and
people
louder,
did
and
not.
that's how I deal with insecurities. But I'm grateful for that because I didn't get smaller, and I think a lot of girls did, and hopefully that's better now. But definitely, like young boys, men threatened by that. And I think that's why all my stuff. I haven't written a lead character that's a man ever. I mean, I have hopefully well-rounded romantic leads in some of my stuff, but I just feel like I have a distinctly female perspective, so that's what I write.
Yes, and now we will go to Felicity for her trauma.
I was kind of debating this one because I don't know how it's reflected in my life that then is about story, but I'm going to tell you anyway because why not? You're here now. When I was very young, I was in the bathroom at school, and it's those kids' bathrooms where you can see underneath, and it's not very tall either, is it? So you're little as well. So anyway, I'm in there doing a wee, and that's a P for translation. In walks my sister, Charlie, and she's got her friends Natalie and Nuala with her. I'm glad there were two N's, Natalie and Nuala. And I'm in there doing a wee, and I'm like, Charlie, oh, hi, Charlie, I'm doing a wee. I don't know why I felt the need to tell her that I was in the bathroom doing a wee, but I did. And so she got her friends to look underneath the toilet stall while I was peeing. She was like, Natalie, Nuala, go look underneath. So I'm just sat there trying to and just get their two heads come underneath the stool. And it was too late for me to stop. You know when you're mid-flow, can't you? You can't stop. I couldn't get up. And I just didn't know what to do. And they kind of went out and they're like, ha! And I was like, yeah, bye, see you at home. Destroyed. It has made me fearful of public bathrooms.
Same.
Yeah. I get a bit of a shy pooer. You know what I mean?
So why did it destroy you? Like the specifics.
This panel has taken a turn.
Well, it's terrible, isn't it? Do you know when you go, like, you're going away somewhere romantic and they're like, oh, we've got an ensuite bathroom, and you're like, no. Who wants an ensuite bathroom on your first romantic trip with anybody? No one.
All glass doors. You're like, oh,
Yeah,
no.
glass doors.
Oh, no.
It's any kind of, yeah.
No, you need the hotel room that has the bathroom and then the separate toilet room that has the door.
Yeah.
And you're like, it's over there, and then we use this sink. But that's the poop and toilet.
Yeah, that's the pooping toilet. Downstairs by the breakfast room.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We're going to hit the road.
Yeah, I hope
And
everyone's
we're done.
enjoying this moment. I mean, it does make me suspicious of my sister because, it definitely was a moment where I was like, oh, maybe she likes making fun of me more than I thought. You know what I mean? It did kind of, and because also I idolized her. She was my younger sister. I made her walk at 8 months because I dragged her with me everywhere. I was like, come on, you know. So I stood her up. She's probably got bad knees now or something. So I think it's definitely part of that I felt very betrayed, and I think I do wait for people to maybe let me down. Oh gosh.
Go a little bit deeper, but I don't think it's a good idea.
Well, when I told Felicity the other day my story, I was like, about what this happened, I started crying, like not crying, but I got like, and I was like, whoa, where did that come from? So it happens. Maybe you just got to
Indeed.
talk to someone about something bad that happened to you. I mean, there's so many weird little things that happened growing up that I could think of 10 right now that happened that I'm like, oh yeah,
Sure.
yep, that leads to that, that leads to that.
I told Felicity this the other day. I saw on Instagram somebody, I don't know if it was the ISA, but somebody shared a picture of Phoebe Waller-Bridge and a quote from her, and she said, "We write to experience life twice." And I think it's dead on. And that's basically what we're talking about here. We're writing to figure out what's wrong with us.
Or
In a lot of
rewriting.
ways, even wild, weird comedies, you can work through some things, you know?
Or get revenge on Darren
Yeah, or-
Seeley, who asked you out in 6th grade and it was a joke.
Murder ex-boyfriends in parking garages.
Okay, so
Not really.
let's say that somebody
He's alive.
who's a writer doesn't have, and then this is the last one, then I'm gonna open up to any questions if anyone has any questions. If you don't have some big trauma or a little trauma.
Congratulations.
I know, Bob, who are you and where did you come from? Are there any other ways that you can use your life or other people's lives or people around you to figure out your voice? Are there other ways besides your own personal trauma?
I think looking at the movies that you like.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
So the reason why we started with the movies that we like is because it gives you a massive clue as to the problems that you have and the things you're drawn to. So really kind of understanding the TV shows, the characters you come back to, the movies that you're drawn to, the ones that when it's on you just have to stop to watch. They've got some clues in there for you about who you are.
I think deep down we all have something that we want other people to know. Whether it's about us or something going on in the world, we're connected even just by thinking that thing is important. I want other people to know that that's happened. And then making it personal in some way. I'll keep it there. But I think that there's some level of, I have a message that I want the world to know and understand. And it could be a teeny little thing. And maybe it isn't incredibly personal or deep, you know, from a flaw place, but you are connected to it and you feel inspired for some reason. So at the very least, having an understanding of the types of stories that you want other people to experience because you like them, that would be step number 0, you know?
Right, so that would be a good exercise along with the pressure point exercise is to make a list of the movies that you keep coming back to. They don't even have to be your favorites, but they're the ones that kind of like, it's that thing. You know, like at the end of Harry Potter, when Neville Longbottom gets 10 points for Gryffindor, I read the book and I cry. I watch the movie and I cry. It's like, yes, that I get it, because that's how I feel sometimes. Of like, it's harder to stand up to your friends than your enemies. Sometimes you're like, oh, I cry. Yeah. So it's things like that. Make a list of the movies that, or scenes even from movies that you keep coming back to, and then see how that can correlate with kind of the stories you want to tell or the themes you want to explore, the characters you want to explore, that kind of thing.
And go find those scripts.
Yeah.
Go find those scripts and see how someone who did it well did it. And then steal.
We always say reading scripts is the best education you can have. It's better than any kind of schooling, just seeing what you like, what you don't like, what works, what doesn't. The other thing I have to say is that when you tell your truth, if you help one other person feel something, know something, accept something, feel compassion, empathy, you have already done your job. And the fact that you get to benefit from it as well, because you get to work out who you are and what you want and how you feel. It's an incredible thing. We love screenwriters. We love filmmakers. What you do is incredibly brave, putting yourself out there. And our storytellers, the society needs us. It needs the storytellers.
There you go.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you,
Question?
Felicity. That was a nice ending. We have about 10 minutes. Does anyone have any questions, or do they want to share their flaws or childhood trauma?
Definitely no to the last part of those questions, but great discussion on your voice and movies you like and how childhood trauma affects what your voice could be. But in basically a tweet, can you tell us what your voice is? So if I'm like pitching you to someone, I'm like, oh, I saw this person on a panel, their voices, I'm not going to tell them your entire trauma story. Like, how can you basically get across your voice in a elevator pitch or a tweet or a sentence?
It's a really
Can we
good
go exercise 3? 1 was movies, 2 was your trauma, 3 is what is your voice in like a sentence?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think Shayna nailed it when she said you're Taylor Swift meets Wednesday Addams. Like that, there's
I
something.
mean, your
in there.
hair's definitely Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Thank you, Meg. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's a really good question.
I think that's a great exercise to
yeah.
work on, is to think about it in a tweet length of going, okay, here's a list of things, and then try to put it in a nice, beautiful sentence.
I'm hopeful about love, but I'm scared you're going to kill me. Not death, you know what I mean? But I'm scared you're going to let me down, or I'm going to let you down.
I would say I'm a female-focused writer who specializes in genre and creating flawed but fun female characters.
Okay.
With a bite, maybe.
Yeah. It's interesting. I feel like I'm going along the lines of what Shayna said a little bit. There's like a George Bailey and Indiana Jones in one person who is risk averse.
That is an interesting combination, Max. And yes, I can see that.
Like if Indiana Jones didn't
friends
leave
know what I'm talking
the
about.
college. Like if he didn't leave the classroom.
I missed that. What'd you say?
Like if Indiana Jones didn't leave
Yes.
the classroom.
He's too afraid to leave the
Yeah.
classroom. Yeah.
It's like, oh, look at that big ball, don't want to get in that tunnel.
Yeah. But I think it's important that it makes people laugh too, though, because I take a comedic approach to most stories. Anyway, I had another example, but we'll keep going.
That's a great combination. Anyone else have any questions? Yeah.
Hi, my question is there a question that, oh, thank you. Is there a question that you've been asked in a meeting or you ask other writers that you're like, fuck, I wish I had prepared that? Or like, I wish I knew the answer to that.
All the time.
And like, can you, I'm just so intense. If you can share, what the question is or what you think other writers should be prepped with.
I had a meeting with the senior VP at Fox, and she was not charmed by my humor at all. It was, and I said that I thought that directing comedy was harder than directing horror, and she said, "Why?" And I was like, She got let go from Fox the next day. Actually, she was in the first cut of. I'm just saying, but. I was beating myself up all weekend. And then I was like, oh, well.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. But I think about that answer a lot. I don't totally know the answer.
Yeah, I guess on that front, if you're gonna say a statement, you should probably know why you're saying that statement.
Yeah.
It just generally.
But it is harder.
Like if you said, I'm a screenwriter who writes stories about females who are always in peril and blah, 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 and then they go, why? And you're like, because I like it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, you probably need to think of the why on everything that you're going to make a statement about.
Yeah. Felicity, were you going to say?
I think the best question, the hardest one, is why you? And I think that's what you should always know. So if they say, like, why are you the person to write it? You've got that answer well and truly ready. Yeah. You've got your trauma laid out. You've got the experience you've been through. You've got the story. You know how you want your audience to feel. So you've kind of you've planned, okay, this is what I'm going to do, so that when people finish watching this in the screen or they leave the theatre, that this is how they feel. And the reason why I have to write it is because of this, this, and this. And I think you will always charm someone with that. I think also as well, if you have a mystery that isn't solved, still know what the mystery is. I have had people who kind of like, well, I'm going to, as we write that, that'll, and I'm like, no, you have to know, even if you don't let us know.
Felicity and I have been in a lot of pitch meetings where the executive asks, in one form or way or another, who's the audience? And in the early parts of our pitch meetings, it was like flush red, like, I don't know exactly what, I think it's this. And we need to know it immediately, especially in the kids and family animation space. If you're trying to write TV, they're very specific about where this particular show needs to live. So know who your audience is. Don't just say, well, I think it's 4-quadrant, and well, okay, why? Why is it 4-quadrant? You name the levels of their project that explain why it's 4-quadrant. Yeah.
I think it's really important to know why you're telling the story. I mean, I've been a lot of film festivals, and sometimes I watch something and I said, why did someone want to tell that story? For me, it is usually to, as you said, like to help someone else. I did a Roe v. Wade project, a Roe v. Wade reactionary project. It's an anthology.
I watched that.
Oh yeah, The Voiceless,
Yeah,
or Give Me an
horrifying.
A.
Absolutely
It's really
terrible.
horrifying. It's really horrible, and it's out now, and it's called Give Me an A, and I have a short in it called The Voiceless, and
Really
a woman wakes
scary.
up on the day that Roe v. Wade got overturned, and everything's fine, and then Roe v. Wade gets an alert on her phone, Roe v. Wade's overturned, she looks in the mirror, her mouth is gone, and then she tries to get her mouth open with a very large knife, and she rips open her mouth, tries to scream, and nothing comes out, and then she goes outside, and all these other women, same thing, nothing comes out, and to me, it's like, I knew what I wanted to say so deeply. I wish I didn't have to say it, but it's like when I had to pitch that to the producer, it was just like, I want to show how you took our voices away. You know, with no overnight parking is, I want to show that you can break free from abuse. My short Parents that came out of our thing is like, I want to show that it's okay to be scared, to possibly start the parenting journey. So that I think is so important. Is, are you just saying something to speak, which I do all the time, but with a project is, why are you telling this story? Are you trying to say something, maybe it's something just to laugh, but I think it's important to use your voice for a reason, hopefully a positive reason.
Want to do one more?
One last question?
Sure. Thank you for the panel. Today, you guys talked a lot about voice, finding your voice and tone. Any tips and tricks for when, from a conversational dialogue standpoint, when you're writing characters that are far from your tone, that you need to kind of, write characters that are far from who you are or how they talk, their dialogue? Any tips and tricks?
That's a great question. Meg, what do you
I
think about
think
that?
writing monologues might be something that's helpful trying to write from their point of view speaking, and that's what I was, my background is all like stand-up and improv and storytelling, and that just to start with my own voice and how to hone that, and so that's what I did a lot, and I was an entertainment journalist, but like being able to first get your voice, which I think is some really good exercises, like, I don't know, try doing stand-up or try doing, there's things like The Moth and storytelling, maybe get a group together of friends and like tell some stories. So I think that's like a good way to like do your voice. And then also for another, it's like I'm not a doctor. I don't have any like experience with that. If I was doing something like a doctor character that was a lead, I think I would get all the research possible that you can, like really do the footwork on that, and then try writing a monologue, based in that character. It's something that you'll probably never use, but get that. Think about what songs do they like to listen to, what, where did they grow up. But for me, clothes are really important. I really see characters' clothes, what kind of footwear. So just start to think about the given circumstances of, whatever character you're thinking of.
Yeah. I think it's spot on. I say this to my writers sometimes, and most of them, if not all of them, get like glassy eyes and they don't know what I'm talking about. Have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons? No. See, most people,
I have.
So Shayna knows, but you understand what Dungeons and Dragons is. So, right. Art school, it lives in art school. They have character sheets that are extremely detailed when you're creating your characters for Dungeons and Dragons. And only until 6-7 years ago did I realize what they're doing, and it's character development so that you create a particular type of character who will react and respond in any particular situation you put them in. So it's a really good question in terms of how do I develop a character that is nothing like me, and it basically then going the line of what Meg is saying as far as you need to do as much development on that character as you would a main character, but then figure out that character sheet. What's their constitution, what's their dexterity, what's their ability, you know, and then consider how any situation you would put them in. Dialogue's tricky. That comes from a place of, like you're saying, just playing with the monologue, but it also kind of has to be somewhat situational because obviously you're putting that character in the plot, you know, of your story. Yeah.
Do readings with people, by the way. That's really, really helps me. I'm in multiple writers groups and we do like 10 pages at a time, and you'll hear how bad your or my dialogue is, you know, when you hear someone else say it and how clunky it is. So I really,
I second that.
really recommend that.
When you do a table read, you're going to hear voices that sound similar or kind of stand out. My advice on that front is there's so many resources now with podcasts and different kinds of audio stories that you could find somebody who's similar to what you're trying to create and listen to those. And if you can hear a rhythm of some sort, then you can kind of, you know, steal some of those parts of that person into your character.
And I would argue there are probably people in your past that are connected somewhat to the person you're trying to develop. I've had multiple coaches, one particular coach who was such an asshole, but he did it in like as few words as possible. Type of he was never raising his voice or screaming, but they were just digs. They hurt, and so there you can exaggerate that type of character to turn that person into an opponent or a villain, and you can try to steal from that voice and then maybe mirror it, or find a character that exists in movies now and maybe I'll put the two together. Yeah, it's research really.
Yeah, I was going to say the thing about Nora Ephron, we spoke about her earlier. She said she was a journalist and getting snippets of people's conversation, and then also investigating relationships, which was her thing. She was a very underrated rom-com writer. I think everyone really sees her greatness now. But I think just pieces of conversation that like become almost, when you're doing accents as an actor, you know, you're like, E by gum, and then from there you try and speak the rest of it like that because that's your key into the accent. You know what I mean? It's like you give yourself a few key phrases maybe and like a style. And then if it is technical, then just do all the technical research, you know, like a doctor or a lawyer. It's amazing. People don't do that research, and then weird things happen in courtrooms. And even if you're
It is
not
crazy to read something where you're like, this is not where, like the CIA headquarters or something, you're like, this is just like very easy to Google. Like, that's not in Canada. Or like something like that. You're just like, ooh, just Google it. And grammar, oh my God. I did want to say, I have a friend named Avishai Weinberger. Is that how? Yeah. And he has, I'm sure it's on Twitter. He has this like these character pages, and he tweets it. You can find it. He does this amazing series of questions to ask yourself and to write, and I highly recommend Avishai Weinberger. So look it up on Twitter. He's a fantastic writer, and he's kind of written.
Say his last name again.
Weinberger.
Lost you at Wein. But
Weinberger.
It might be.
Weinberger.
Yeah.
Your two
I
favorites.
heard. I was mixing his first name with his last name as if that was his last name.
Avishai is the first name.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Weinberger.
So I recommend checking it out.
Cool. Yeah.
Great. I think we are finished. So thank you, everybody, so much for coming out. I know that's
Thank
the
you.
last panel of Holly Shorts, so
Last
thank you so
panel.
much for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.